So our next topic we have is, even though we kind of off, we're in the 2021 now and asking about the last decade, but we do what we want to do here at Input Output. So, so looking back on the last decade, from the 2010s to the 2019, what would you say for you was like the best fighting game, your favorite fighting game that came out in that decade timeline? So we can go ahead and ain't too much else to say about that. So we can go ahead and start with you, Devin.
It's Marvel, baby. I gotta say Marvel 3, man. Like Marvel 3 still got a place in my heart. Just play the game till I couldn't no more. Just it was a lot of fun. I know people always say Marvel's so cheap. Marvel's so cheap. Hey man, that's just it is what it is, man. You step into that arena, you know what's gonna happen, man. You about to guard broken, high low at the same time. You just gotta understand that's the world that you're walking into. But yeah, I mean Marvel 3 for me was just um it was just one of those things where like I was waiting for it for so long from Marvel 2. Was a big fan of that game, even though I wasn't into it competitive because at the time it came out, I was like what maybe like 10 or 11. But I just love playing the game with my big brother. And then I was like, man, I can't wait for them to make the next one. And then 2010s, we get the next one, Marvel 3, and it's just like, um, I just love the game, man. So many characters, especially when they brought Ultimate out, so many extra characters. I kind of wish we could have got to see the game evolve a little bit. We kind of did, but they made like a PC mod. I just downloaded recently the I think it was EX mod that shows a lot of different things, adds some new characters. But yeah, Marvel 3 for me was just the hype around it, the tournament scene, seeing the TACs and tournaments and stuff of that nature, man. It was a hype game. Definitely to me, one of the hypest. Just watching the game was just so encapsulating, just like you watching it's like, man, you can't wait to get to top eight. Well, I'll say outside of the time where everybody was playing the same character. Because at one point everybody was, oh, top eight, we got zero, man. You know what I'm saying? Zoopity zoop, 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 Dr. Doom. It was still cool to watch, but then it kind of evolved after that. Once it kind of died down a little bit, now you've seen a lot more low tier characters coming in and doing a lot of crazy stuff. People are like finding out even more stuff about the game. So for me, definitely was Marvel 3, man. That game always have a place in my heart and my personal favorite out of the past decades.
Um, so for like the past decade, I would probably say, and I know it's a pretty recent game, but Soul Calibur 6 has really stolen my attention over the past like I think it's like year. Yeah, like the past year that I've been playing it, it's really like really held my attention more than most fighting games I've played. I mean, I really like Tekken. Like, don't get me wrong, like I love that game, but I really like meshed very well with Soul Calibur. I think I always kind of meshed well with Soul Calibur, even like especially back in like there was like the early 2000s when Soul Calibur 2 came out, when like everybody was playing Soul Calibur 2, and like me and like we would I was on the wrestling team, and what we would do is like we would have to sit and wait during like a tournament where there'd be multiple teams there. So what we would do is we would bring a CRT TV, a PlayStation 2, and we would only have like two games. We would have Soul Calibur 2 and Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2. Those were the only games that we would play. And more often than not, we were playing Soul Calibur 2 because like everybody loved that game. That game was like freaking amazing. It was godlike. And even like now, kind of like Soul Calibur 6 came out, I didn't really pay any attention to it because I was already into Tekken, you know, by the time like Soul Calibur 6 came out. And then I started playing it like at the end of 2019, I think, like at the end of 2019. And I was like, wow, this game is pretty freaking good. I love it. It's amazing. I feel like, I mean, like, I love how like the characters, like I always felt like the characters are always yelling and screaming at each other during the match. Oh, you maggot! Like, like when you're playing as Astaroth, and and it's like you get a feel for what kind of person he is on the inside when he's calling you a maggot. You know what I mean? It's kind of funny, like the way that Ivy is constantly like yelling at you and like trying to step on you and stuff like that. That's it's it speaks to what kind of character she is. Like I really appreciate that about the game. But in addition to that, I just like I don't. I mean, I know I'm gonna like catch a little bit of flack for this, but uh I'd like not having to do a Korean backdash to back up. You know, I kind of like just being able to backpedal. I think that's I mean, in your entire life, have you ever been in the middle of a fight and then been like, oh man, I gotta back up?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I got to backdash cancel to get away from this dude I'm fighting. I'm like, no, you just back up. But anyway, I digress. Soul Calibur 6 would be my favorite game of the past decade, yes.
I look at this thing because everybody we talk about this sometimes, right? Like best of our generation, best of the decade. I look at this argument a little differently because fighting games change so drastically, especially when you look at 10 years. You're looking at 2 console generations there. So the way I always look at this this argument is I go by console generations. So for me, console generations would be fighting games in between 2005 to 2013, the 360 PS3 era, and then 2014 to 2020, that's the 8th console generation. Because if you compare those 2 lineups of whatever games, they're really different. It's kind of hard to compare them. But if we're just doing decade, like 10 years, I would say Tekken 7. Tekken 7, even though I didn't really like it in Season 3 and Season 4, that game did enough, especially in the time that it came in, to really separate itself from the pack because it had a lot of innovation in it to push Tekken to the mainstream, but it still held on to that legacy skill. I know you said you don't like backdashing, but backdashing is a huge trait in Tekken to see who knows how to play defense and who doesn't. It makes a giant difference. It's like, can you get out of this mix-up or can you not? Even if you can't, and you kind of have to hold that, especially in Tekken 7, because a lot of characters will make you hold it. So I like that it did that, especially within the first 2 seasons. And then the pacing kind of went away to being a lot faster and more damage later on. But I would say it did so much in the first 2 seasons that it was a really special game. It came at a special time, and I think you really saw that with numbers. You saw that with the Tekken World Tour. It was it was a really big game for the FGC in the last decade. So that would be my favorite too. I think I sunk in the most hours out of any game in the last decade in Tekken 7 for sure.